I realized she was going to dismantle the fortress I had spent 10 years building the instant her eyes met mine. The feeling was immediate, violent, and completely unwelcome. It wasn't the pleasant flutter people wrote about in bad poetry. It was the sudden, sickening drop you feel when you realize you've forgotten how to breathe and the air is rushing out of your lungs. My entire carefully constructed existence, built brick by heavy brick out of isolation and routine, shuddered on its foundation. I had come to this dusty, quiet corner of the Brattle bookshop in Boston specifically because it promised anonymity and silence, a sanctuary from the relentless noise of human connection. I specialized in stillness. I craved the predictable emptiness. For the better part of a decade, emptiness had been my safety net, the solid ground beneath my feet. Now, standing between the worn shelves dedicated to 20th century American literature, I felt vertigo. My hands, usually steady, tightened painfully around the spine of a first edition I hadn't even registered, the rough paper biting into my skin. This deep, profound discomfort was the price I paid for the illusion of control. I knew why I guarded my internal landscape with such merciless vigilance. The cost of letting someone in had been calculated years ago in the ruins of my early 20s, a catastrophic emotional bankruptcy that nearly ended me. Her name was Sarah. She hadn't just left. She had meticulously disassembled my belief in fidelity, my concept of future, and my inherent trust in my own judgment. I was too open then, too trusting, too ready to surrender myself completely to the narrative of us. When she walked away, it wasn't just a breakup. It was the physical removal of a vital organ. The trauma taught me a brutal lesson. Vulnerability is synonymous with disposable wreckage. I moved from New York to Boston shortly after, swapping the relentless chaos for a predictable, manageable life in the Back Bay. I chose a career in data analysis, precise, logical, emotionally neutral. My apartment was minimalist, my interactions transactional, and my heart, I had ensured, was dormant. I didn't date, I didn't pursue friendships beyond professional courtesy, and I certainly didn't linger in public spaces where accidental intimacy might occur. My life was designed to be small, safe, and perpetually solitary. And it worked. Until she appeared. I had been tracing the title of a forgotten Fitzgerald novel when I looked up. She was standing exactly 3 feet away, angled slightly toward the non-fiction section, but her gaze was fixed directly on me. She wasn't dressed to impress, just worn jeans and a thick fisherman's sweater, appropriate for a chill Massachusetts afternoon. Her hair was a shade of deep auburn, pulled back messily, and she was holding a stack of books that looked impossibly heavy. None of this registered as detail at first. What hit me was the light in her eyes, a kind of fierce, unapologetic curiosity that didn't pity or judge my inherent stiffness. And then she smiled. It wasn't a nervous, polite acknowledgement designed to end a gaze. It was a genuine, full-spectrum smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes and seemed to be directed not at my physical form, but straight into the center of that desolate fortress I inhabited. It was a recognition, a spark of pure, unadulterated human warmth that felt like a sudden scorching fever after a long, icy winter. I felt the 10 years of careful insulation crumble like dry plaster, the noise of the street outside, the gentle creak of the old wooden floorboards, even the low murmur of the nearby cashier, all of it faded, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat pounding a desperate rhythm against my ribs. It was terrifying, this sudden, overwhelming sense of seeing and being seen. I knew I should break the eye contact. I should lower my head, feign interest in the book in my hands, and melt into the shadows of the stacks. That was my protocol. That was the rule that kept me safe. But her smile held me captive, not coercively, but like a gravitational force I was too exhausted to fight. "You look like you're trying to solve a great mystery," she finally said, her voice low and resonant, cutting through the heavy air with surprising ease. I must have looked utterly bewildered. My throat felt thick, unused to forming impromptu words. I think I just found one," I managed, the answer sounding far more cryptic and honest than I intended. She tilted her head, her smile softening into amusement. "The mystery of which forgotten classic deserves your afternoon. Mine is always the pursuit of the perfect, slightly battered history text." She gestured to the heavy stack in her arms. "I'm Clara, by the way, and I apologize for staring, but you have that classic bookstore intensity look." Clara. The name tasted real, solid. I took a deliberate breath, forcing my shoulders to drop an inch. "Ethan," I replied, "and you caught me contemplating whether literature should be a refuge or a roadmap." "Why not both?" she countered immediately, taking a careful step closer, allowing the weight of her presence to shift the equilibrium in my space. A refuge, when you need to hide from the world, and a roadmap when you realize hiding isn't working anymore. There was an immediate, stunning alignment in her words. She hadn't known my internal struggle, yet she had articulated the exact dilemma I had been avoiding for years. It wasn't small talk, it was an accidental confession. The initial shock gave way to a powerful, mesmerizing curiosity. I felt safe talking to her, safe in a way that defied every single alarm bell ringing in the back of my mind. We fell into a conversation that lasted 40 minutes, leaning against a rickety bookcase, discussing everything from the existential dread of postmodernism to the best hidden pizza joints in Cambridge. She was brilliant, quick-witted, and possessed a devastating empathy that seemed to intuit my pauses and unspoken anxieties. We didn't talk about our jobs or families. We talked about the architecture of our inner lives. When she finally had to leave, she was late for a graduate seminar at Tufts. She didn't ask for my number. She commanded it, pulling a pen out of her sweater pocket and writing her name and phone number on the inside cover of the forgotten Fitzgerald novel I was still holding. "Call me Ethan," she said, her eyes serious now, the playful edge gone. "This wasn't an accident. I have a feeling about people, and you, my intense bookstore mystery, are worth the effort." And I did call her. The subsequent weeks were a blurring rush of unexpected joy. Our dates weren't fancy. They were long walks through the Boston Public Garden in the crisp autumn air, late-night dinners where the conversation flowed as easily as the wine, and hours spent sitting on her couch, listening to obscure jazz records. I found myself revealing things I hadn't even admitted to my therapist years ago. I told her about Sarah, about the paralyzing fear of repeating that failure, the terror of becoming emotionally reliant on someone who might disappear. Clara never flinched. She listened with a deep, unsettling clarity. She didn't try to fix me or minimize the pain. She simply offered connection. Her laughter was contagious, rich, and full of a life I realized I desperately missed. For the first time, my meticulously ordered apartment felt less like a sanctuary and more like a tomb. I started craving the messy, unpredictable thrill of being with her, of allowing myself to be seen, imperfections and all. But as the intimacy deepened, the inevitable happened. The fortress fought back. We were 6 weeks in. We had just spent a perfect Saturday exploring the coast near Gloucester, the air thick with salt, and the promise of a shared future suddenly looming large. That evening, back in my sterile apartment, as she lay sleeping peacefully beside me, the old panic seized me. This is too good. This means disaster is imminent. The logical part of my brain screamed, "She will leave, they always do, you are not strong enough to survive the wreckage again." I withdrew, subtly at first, a few missed calls, vague answers about scheduling our next date. Then, overtly, I became analytical, detached, finding small, irrelevant flaws in our connection, trying to rationalize the separation before it could be imposed upon me. I was preparing the escape hatch, preemptively tearing down the beautiful structure we were building, simply because I couldn't bear the thought of someone else doing it first. Clara noticed immediately. She didn't press or accuse. She waited exactly 2 days, and then she showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying 2 cups of steaming tea and the copy of the Fitzgerald book I had left at her place. "We need to talk about the wall, Ethan," she said softly, setting the tea down on my coffee table, refusing to sit on the opposite couch, opting instead to stand directly in front. To have me, forcing me to look up. My defensive reflex was immediate. "There's no wall, Clara. I've just been busy with a demanding project at work. I told you this merger—" "Stop," she interrupted, her voice firm but devoid of anger. "Don't insult my intelligence or yours. I know what a fortress looks like, Ethan. I see the look in your eyes when we talk about making plans further than a week out. It's the look of a man getting ready to run." The brutal honesty stung, but the lack of accusation disarmed me. "It's complicated," I whispered, dropping my gaze to my hands. "It's terrifying," she corrected, stepping closer and gently taking my hands in hers. Her touch was grounding, warm. "And I get it. I know you were hurt, deeply. But here's the thing you haven't realized yet, Ethan. Sarah didn't take your ability to love. She just broke your definition of safety. You confuse stability with isolation, and you believe vulnerability is a weakness that will lead to certain death." Tears, hot and unexpected, pricked my eyes. I hadn't cried in years. The confession spilled out, raw and uncontrolled. "I can't do it again, Clara. I can't invest everything, believe everything, only to be deemed disposable. I am terrified that the better this gets, the worse the loss will be. And I don't think I'd survive the wreckage a second time." She didn't try to offer false promises or cheesy reassurances. She looked straight into the core of my fear. "I can't promise you a lifetime without pain, Ethan. No honest person can. I might leave. I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. Life is inherently messy and terrifying, but if you lock yourself away now, you are choosing guaranteed emptiness over potential wreckage. And I am telling you with absolute certainty that you are worth the risk. We are worth the risk." She squeezed my hands. "I am not asking you to dismantle your fortress in a day. I am just asking you to install a small window. Just let me see in. Let me be the safe place you never had, but not because I'm predictable, but because I am honest." The weight of my decade-long burden seemed to lift marginally. Her words weren't a plea. They were a mature, adult challenge. She wasn't asking me to ignore my past. She was asking me to use it as a compass, not an anchor. "A small window," I repeated, tasting the words. "That sounds terrifying." "Good," she smiled, that magnificent bookstore moment smile returning. "That means it's real." In that moment, I made the decision that changed the trajectory of my life. It wasn't a dizzying, reckless leap of faith, but a slow, heavy commitment to try, to stay, and to tolerate the terrifying uncertainty of genuine connection. "Okay, Clara," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I won't run. I will stay." It's been 4 years since that confrontation in my sterile Boston apartment. We moved in, together a year later, choosing a loft near the waterfront that is bright, perpetually cluttered, and filled with noise and laughter. My life is still precise in my work, but the edges of my existence are soft, rounded by her presence. She didn't come into my life to fix me or to make me whole. She arrived simply to show me that the stability I desperately sought wasn't found in isolation, but in the radical acceptance of vulnerability. Clara didn't change my life. She taught me how to live, fully exposed, profoundly loved, and finally completely free from the ghosts of my past. I am still Ethan, the man who fears loss. But now I am also Ethan, the man who risks joy, simply because of a smile in an old Boston bookstore. We left the bookstore almost an hour later, the silence between us having evolved from awkward tension into a quiet, understanding current. We didn't rush. We walked toward the waterfront, the late afternoon sun turning the glass, facades of the seaport district into sheets of burning gold. I suggested coffee, needing a neutral space to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in my meticulously ordered life. She agreed instantly, her eyes alight with an unhurried confidence that was utterly disarming. Sitting across from her in a small, noisy cafe, the kind I usually avoided in favor of the clinical silence of my apartment, I felt something entirely alien. Ease. I had expected the familiar, internal checklist. Analyze her motives, anticipate the exit strategy, maintain emotional distance. But with Clara, the checklist vanished. We talked, but it wasn't the polite, superficial exchange required by modern dating. It was substantial. She spoke about her work as an architect, the pleasure she took in creating spaces where people lived and connected. I spoke about my financial models, my obsession with predictability and data. The irony was not lost on me. I was a man obsessed with mitigating risk, sitting across from the single greatest variable I had ever willingly introduced into my equation. She didn't pry into the dark, shadowed corners of my past, but she offered small, luminous pieces of her own. She mentioned losing a beloved professor who had shaped her career and the subsequent confusing grief that taught her the difference between closure and acceptance. "It's amazing how we build walls, isn't it?" she mused, stirring her latte slowly, her focus entirely on the whirlpool in the cup. "We think the material is stone and steel, but really it's just accumulated fear." Her words weren't accusatory, they were collaborative. She wasn't judging my fortress. She was acknowledging that she, too, understood the temptation of isolation. For the first time since Sarah, I felt seen without feeling judged. It was an exquisite, terrifying relief. When we finally parted ways near the harbor, under the amber glow of the streetlights, I didn't shake her hand or offer a polite peck on the cheek. I simply stood there, incapable of moving, and she paused, offering a faint, knowing smile. There was no need for a dramatic embrace. The chemistry between us was already a heavy, palpable thing, a promise suspended in the cold Boston air. "Call me Ethan," she said, her voice low, "but only when you're ready to stop running." I called her the next morning. The following weeks unfolded with an almost lyrical perfection. It was a slow, deliberate unfolding of connection, not a frantic rush toward intimacy. We built a routine, museum visits where we argued passionately about abstract art, late-night walks through the public garden, and dinners at my apartment where the sound of her laughter finally broke the echoing silence I had cultivated for years. The true rapprochement began when the superficial safety dissolved. I found myself telling her things I hadn't even admitted to my therapist. Not the core trauma yet, that was still locked away in a vault, but the peripheral pain, the loneliness that felt less like a choice and more like a permanent condition, the constant, exhausting vigilance I maintained against the possibility of future heartbreak. One rainy Saturday evening, curled up on my sofa, we were talking about childhood dreams. She confessed she had once wanted to be a deep-sea diver, a vocation she abandoned because of intense claustrophobia. "It's funny," she said, leaning her head against my shoulder, a gesture that felt as natural as breathing. I stopped trying to go deep underwater, but now I realize I spend all my time trying to go deep inside people. I swallowed hard, the vulnerability of the moment tightening my chest. "I think you found the Titanic in me, Clara. Lots of beautiful history, but mostly just wreckage and ice." She turned her head to look at me, her expression soft, but firm. "No, Ethan. I found a structure that was built to last, but abandoned too soon. And sometimes, the most beautiful things are the ones that are strongest in the face of the pressure." That night, I told her about the moment I realized my last relationship had died. Not Sarah, but the one after, the one I used as a bandage. I told her how I had meticulously documented all the reasons why I couldn't commit, making a spreadsheet of potential flaws, a clinical dissection of affection. Clara didn't flinch. She simply took my hand, her touch grounding and real. "You weren't trying to protect yourself from her," she whispered, her eyes holding mine steady. "You were trying to protect her from the fallout when you inevitably ran." Her insight was brutal and true. We stayed up until 3 a.m., the conversation flowing like a river breaking through a dam. We shared secrets about our parents, our irrational fears, mine, leaving the stove on, hers, spiders the size of dinner plates, and the moments we were most ashamed of. The connection wasn't just chemistry, it was the sacred, terrifying trust of two souls recognizing their mutual brokenness and deciding together that they didn't have to be fixed to be worthy of love. I found myself smiling more, laughing until my stomach ached. I even started leaving my meticulously organized desk slightly cluttered, a small rebellious act of surrender to her chaos. I was falling, slowly, heavily, and against every defense mechanism I had built. The obstacle arrived not as a dramatic fight or a sudden revelation, but as a chilling, internal feedback loop. We were planning our first weekend away, a short trip up the coast to a quiet, isolated cabin in Maine, an idea that had sprung from a late-night fantasy about escaping the relentless hum of Boston. The plans were finalized, the booking confirmation was on my screen, and she was happily packing a small duffel bag in the corner of my living room, humming some unfamiliar tune. The scene was domestic, hopeful, and entirely beautiful. But as I watched her fold a sweater, a soft grey cashmere that smelled faintly of her unique perfume, a cold dread seized my heart. It wasn't about the sweater or the trip, it was about the implication. Future. This trip meant an investment of time, shared space, and emotional commitment. It meant building a memory, a shared history. And when I looked at that memory, my mind didn't see the beautiful cabin or the quiet woods. It saw the inevitable blank space where the memory would someday cease to exist. I saw the fragility of it all, the sheer astronomical probability that this too would end. My chest constricted, a sudden suffocating tightness that hadn't visited me in months. It was the phantom pain of my past, the terrifying knowledge that the higher you build the wall, the more catastrophic the eventual fall. I stood up abruptly, knocking my coffee cup slightly, the sudden movement causing Clara to look up, her expression shifting instantly from joyous anticipation to concerned confusion. "Ethan, are you okay?" I couldn't look at her. Her happiness was too bright, too vulnerable, too much like the happiness I had lost. If I allowed myself to feel this joy completely, the subsequent grief would annihilate me. My brain screamed the familiar, destructive command: run. Destroy it before it destroys you. "I can't," I heard myself say, the word dry and hollow. I walked straight past her, toward the window overlooking the city, needing the cold glass against my forehead to ground me. "Can't what?" she asked, her voice still gentle but laced with a growing wariness. She hadn't moved. She was waiting for the explanation, the maturity in her patience only increasing my self-loathing. "The trip. I can't go." My voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I had felt minutes earlier. I was building the walls back up brick by frantic brick. "Okay," she said slowly. "We don't have to go. We can stay here. But tell me why, Ethan. Is it work? Money?" "No. It's everything." I turned, finally looking at her, and deployed the emotional distance I specialized in. I made my voice cold, clinical, and dismissive. "I think we moved too fast, Clara. This isn't sustainable. I don't know what I was thinking." This level of involvement, it complicates things unnecessarily. It was a lie, a defense mechanism disguised as logic. She wasn't complicating my life, she was simplifying it, clearing away the debris of my isolation. But the fear of losing her was so profound that my only option, in that moment of terror, was to push her away, ensuring that when the loss inevitably came, it would be my fault, on my terms. I would rather be the architect of my own despair than the victim of fate again. Clara stood up slowly, her cashmere sweater still half folded in her hand. Her eyes were wide, not with tears or anger, but with a deep, penetrating sorrow that mirrored my own internal landscape. She didn't argue or plead. She just watched me, the man who had shown her his deepest self only to retreat into the shell the moment true commitment was required. The silence that followed was heavy, weighted with the destruction of weeks of careful, vulnerable connection. I had done it again. I had built a beautiful bridge only to burn it down before the first car drove across. The first connection wasn't explosive. It was a quiet, internal supernova. I remember sitting across from her at that pretentious little coffee shop in the financial district of Boston, the noise of espresso machines and hurried midday chatter fading into a dull hum. I had expected the usual dance, the superficial banter, the cautious probing, but Clara skipped the choreography entirely. She simply saw me. She was discussing her work as a museum curator, talking about how the most significant artifacts weren't the gold or the jewels, but the mundane items that spoke volumes about how people actually lived. a worn leather shoe, a broken clay pipe. I realized I was leaning in so close I could smell the faint scent of cinnamon and old paper that clung to her. She paused, not because I was staring, but because she felt my focus. "I think," she said, resting her chin on her hand, her gaze steady and serious, "that people are afraid of the mundane in romance. They want drama, but what they really need is the quiet comfort of the everyday things that last." It was an arrow straight to the core of my isolation. For years I had chased the dramatic distraction, the high-stakes risk, precisely because it was temporary and therefore safe. The thought of something lasting, something everyday, terrified me. Yet hearing her voice articulate that need, I felt a strange, profound safety I hadn't known since my 20s. It was the first time I hadn't felt the immediate, reflexive urge to build distance. Instead, I felt the urge to share the blueprints of my soul. I wasn't just attracted to her, I was safe with her. That subtle shift from desire to safety was the true chemical reaction. The weeks that followed were a gradual, deliberate excavation. I had spent so long building the fortress around my emotional life that I honestly forgot what the inside looked like, what I had been protecting. Clara didn't use a battering ram, she used a delicate trowel, carefully chipping away the fear. We spent endless hours on the worn leather couch in my Beacon Hill apartment, the city lights below us blurred by the humid summer air. It was during one of those nights, after a third glass of mediocre Merlot, that I finally told her the truth about Amelia. Not the easy version, the summary I gave acquaintances, but the raw, jagged edges of the loss, the self-blame, and the decade-long dedication to self-punishment that followed. I told her how I had convinced myself that if I loved someone truly and completely, the universe would always snatch them away, punishing my happiness with relentless cruelty. I watched her face, waiting for the flicker of pity, the look of a woman who realizes she's dating a liability, a walking trauma bomb, but it never came. She simply reached across the space between us, not to hold my hand in a gesture of solace, but to gently touch the silver ring I still wore on my pinky, a relic of that past life. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice low and utterly sincere, "that wasn't your fault. That wasn't a punishment for happiness. That was just tragedy, and tragedy is what makes us human, not what defines our future." Her acceptance was absolute. It was in that moment, under the cover of shared vulnerabilities and whispered secrets, that the last structural wall I'd erected crumbled. We weren't just two people dating, we were two scarred souls recognizing the mirror image of their pain and choosing to heal together. We talked about silly things too, her irrational fear of pigeons, my deep, embarrassing obsession with 80s action movies. We laughed until our stomachs ached, the sound echoing in the apartment that had been silent for far too long. I started thinking about us, not as a temporary respite from solitude, but as a permanent fixture. I started leaving my toothbrush at her place in Cambridge. I started allowing myself to be happy, and that, of course, was the trigger. The fear, that insidious, venomous serpent I thought I had banished, didn't die. It had merely been waiting, coiled in the dark corners of my subconscious, waiting for the moment the stakes became unbearable. It struck when we were folding laundry, of all things. We were planning a spontaneous weekend trip to Montreal, discussing logistics, and Clara was talking about how she might need to ship some of her larger pieces of art to a gallery show next month. "If we end up going to Montreal," she mused, holding up one of my worn college t-shirts, "we should look at some larger apartments when we get back. Yours is too tight for two people and all my canvases. Maybe somewhere in Somerville?" It was a throwaway comment, a casual suggestion of cohabitation, a future casually tossed into the laundry basket. But to my terror-stricken mind, it wasn't casual at all. It was an irreversible declaration of commitment, a giant red target painted on her back. Apartments. Moving in. Permanence. The internal alarm sounded, a deafening klaxon of panic. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic prisoner desperate for escape. If I allowed this exquisite, terrifying reality, where Clara was woven into the fabric of my life, The loss, when it inevitably came, would obliterate me completely. The pain of Amelia had been a wound. Losing Clara would be the termination of the soul. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't subject myself to that fate again. I had to preempt the destruction. I had to destroy it myself now while I still controlled the blast radius. The Montreal tickets were sitting on the coffee table. She had just finished packing a small bag for the gym. I felt the blood drain from my face, replaced by a cold, numbing logic. The walls went up instantly. I was building the walls back up, brick by frantic brick. "Okay," she said slowly. "We don't have to go. We can stay here. But tell me why, Ethan. Is it work? Money?" "No, it's everything." I turned, finally looking at her, and deployed the emotional distance I specialized in. I made my voice cold, clinical, and dismissive. "I think we moved too fast, Clara. This isn't sustainable. I don't know what I was thinking. This level of involvement, it complicates things unnecessarily. It was a lie, a defense mechanism disguised as logic. She wasn't complicating my life. She was simplifying it, clearing away the debris of my isolation. But the fear of losing her was so profound that my only option, in that moment of terror, was to push her away, ensuring that when the loss inevitably came, it would be my fault, on my terms. I would rather be the architect of my own despair than the victim of fate again. Clara stood up slowly, her cashmere sweater still half folded in her hand. Her eyes were wide, not with tears or anger, but with a deep, penetrating sorrow that mirrored my own internal landscape. She didn't argue or plead. She just watched me, the man who had shown her his deepest self, only to retreat into the shell the moment true commitment was required. The silence that followed was heavy, weighted with the destruction of weeks of careful, vulnerable connection. I had done it again. I had built a beautiful bridge only to burn it down before the first car drove across. Clara stood up slowly, her cashmere sweater still half folded in her hand. Her eyes were wide, not with tears or anger, but with a deep, penetrating sorrow that mirrored my own internal landscape. She didn't argue or plead. She just watched me, the man who had shown her his deepest self, only to retreat into the shell the moment true commitment was required. The silence that followed was heavy, weighted with the destruction of weeks of careful, vulnerable connection. I had done it again. I had built a beautiful bridge, only to burn it down before the first car drove across. My chest felt hollow, a vast echoing space where my heart used to reside. I waited for the inevitable slamming door, the sharp word, the final justifiable condemnation. I deserved it all. I looked away, fixating on a microscopic crack in the hardwood floor of my Seattle apartment, unable to meet the judgment in her gaze. "Look at me, Ethan," she finally said, her voice low, steady, and utterly devastating. It wasn't a request. It was an anchor dropped into the churning sea of my panic. I forced my head up. Her expression was the same, that deep, unsettling pity. "You're doing what you think is safe," she continued, taking a careful step toward the coffee table separating us. "You're trying to manage the pain. You believe if you cut the cord now, you control the moment of agony, protecting yourself from the blind side later." She paused, her eyes searching mine, seeing through the logic and straight to the terror. "But that's not protection, Ethan. That's preemptive grief. You are choosing to grieve me now, because the possibility of grieving me later, when it might actually be unavoidable, is too overwhelming." The accuracy of her analysis was a physical blow. She understood my fortress better than I did. I opened my mouth, intending to argue, to fall back on the tired defense about my career in finance demanding solitude, about my inability to balance life and love after losing Maya years ago, the loss that had sculpted my fear into concrete. "Stop," she whispered, cutting off the nascent lie. "Don't insult us with excuses about work or timing. This isn't about convenience. This is about what happened in Boston 5 years ago. This is about the shock of watching someone you love disappear and deciding that the solution is to never love that fiercely again." My breath hitched. I hadn't told her all the details of Maya's sudden illness, only that I had lost someone. But Clara, in her profound, quiet way, had pieced together the architecture of my trauma. Yes, I choked out, the single word scraping my throat raw. Yes, it is about that. I won't sit at the bedside again, Clara. I won't watch the light fade. I won't sign the papers. I can't survive that kind of ending twice, and every beautiful thing we build, I gestured wildly between us, my hands trembling, is just setting the stage for that catastrophe. I know how this story ends, and I can't afford the ticket to watch it. Clara didn't flinch. She finally walked around the table and stood directly in front of me. She placed both hands gently on my shoulders, grounding me, forcing me to feel her presence, her warmth, her absolute reality. "You don't know how this story ends, Ethan. You only know how the last one did," she stated, her voice regaining a steeliness that wasn't harsh but resolute. "And I won't let you treat me like a casualty you haven't sustained yet. I refuse to be a ghost in your memory while I'm still standing here, alive and loving you." The words, "loving you," shattered the last fragment of my control. I felt the hot, unfamiliar sting of tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming, profound relief that someone finally saw the broken gears inside me and didn't run. "What if it happens again?" I whispered, the fear turning me back into the grieving shell I had been 5 years ago. "What if I lose you? What if I fail you?" Clara tightened her grip, pulling me closer until I could smell the subtle scent of bergamot and the clean scent of her skin. She looked straight into my eyes, her gaze unflinching. "Then we will face it. Together. And if the worst happens, if time or tragedy takes me, you will have to carry the grief, yes, but you will carry the memory of everything we built, too, not the memory of you running away when it got real." Her voice softened, reaching a deep well of emotion I didn't know I possessed. "You think you are protecting yourself from pain, but you are actually protecting yourself from joy. And I choose the risk of sorrow with you, Ethan, over the absolute guaranteed safety. Of solitude without you. That was it. The mature, heavy truth. The choice wasn't between safety and catastrophe. It was between existence and life. My careful, sterile existence versus the messy, terrifying, brilliant life she offered. I finally collapsed into her embrace, the long-held tension of years leaving my body in a shuddering exhale. I buried my face in her neck, clinging to her as if she were the only solid thing in a world made of shifting sand. "I love you, Clara," I confessed, the words tasting like metal and liberation. "I am terrified. I am still scared of tomorrow. But I am more terrified of a life where I don't get to find out what happens next with you." She held me tighter, a small, knowing smile touching her lips against my temple. "Good. Stay scared then. Just stay here." The decision was made, not with reckless abandon, but with a weary, adult understanding that life is inherently risky, and true partnership is signing up for that risk together. I had spent so long trying to construct a life immune to pain, and she had shown me that such a life was not life at all, but merely preservation. Clara and I didn't rush into anything. We simply stopped running. We faced the future with the sobering, beautiful knowledge that one day, one of us would feel this profound loss again. But now that inevitability didn't paralyze me. It motivated me. It transformed every shared laugh, every late-night conversation in our cozy apartment in Seattle, every walk along Puget Sound, into something sacred and urgent. She didn't change my life by erasing my past or fixing my trauma. She simply taught me that the pain of the past does not define the potential of the future. She taught me that love isn't a shield against tragedy, but a reason to embrace the vulnerability of the present. Clara didn't change my life. She taught me how to live it, fully exposed, beautifully, flawed and deeply irrevocably loved. I had thought my destiny was to endure. She showed me it was to thrive.